On today's show, the Hawks now know who they will face on Friday. It's the Miami Heat, a very familiar foe in some respects for Atlanta. We'll get into that, plus a Kings pick update and much more, and all that's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1954 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep in the night here on a Wednesday evening into Thursday morning. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Check it out now at the Game Time app. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show to make it your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and includes Spotify. We are also on YouTube. Please like this video as you're watching it. And crucially, please be sure to tell your friends, family, acquaintances, etc. about the Locked On Hawks podcast. If you missed it, I did a full deep dive into what became a pretty bad loss, I thought, for the Hawks on Tuesday in Orlando. I talked about the game extensively. We'll do a little bit more of that on today's show later on, but it's kind of a bonus episode, actually, kind of the in-between the games episode. The plan is to record a crossover, kind of a network event crossover sometime on Thursday with the hosts of the Locked On Heat podcast, because the Hawks now know they'll be facing the Miami Heat on Friday night in a win or go home play-in game. So the Heat beat the Bulls decisively on Tuesday. That wasn't a massive surprise, but they were on the road in that game and won by 19 points. It's pretty comfortable along the way. But we'll get into that much more later on in the podcast. In the meantime, it'll probably be a shorter episode, kind of a bonus episode, but some schedule stuff, a Kings pick update, a mailbag question that we'll get into, and kind of just a touching base of sorts between the two games. So first things first, Friday's game is an earlier tip-off, about 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it's another TNT exclusive game against Miami. I got questions about this throughout the week. The folks at FanDuel Sports Network, Bob Rathman, Dominic Wilkins, etc., they do not have the ability, or I guess the permission from the league, obviously. It's a national TV exclusive, so they cannot broadcast. If the Hawks win on Friday, I have been told by Bob and others, they'll be back on the air for the first round of the playoffs. So if you are jonesing for Bob and Neek, they'll be back if the Hawks win on Friday. But in the meantime, it's TNT only on Friday night. And now this might not matter, but the schedule is now out for the first round of the playoffs. So if the Hawks win on Friday, game one of the series against Cleveland, who's the number one seed, will be Sunday at 7 p.m. If you remember a couple of years ago, the Hawks had to play a game one game on Sunday afternoon after winning the play-in on Friday night. That was a tough situation. A little bit better. They have to only play on Sunday evening now after a Friday night game, but still 7 o'clock Sunday. And then there's another 2-day break before game two on Wednesday in Cleveland. And then another 2-day break before game three. If it happens, will be next Saturday back in Atlanta, will be the first home playoff game if the Hawks have a home playoff game this year, and so on and so on. So there's that. Anyway, we're going to at least leave with that. The other thing that kind of happened that was notable, I would say, from Wednesday night is that the Sacramento Kings lost to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the Hawks have been tracking the Kings all year long. I try not to do it too much on the podcast, but I've been doing it regularly because the Hawks have a top 12 protected pick coming or not coming from Sacramento. That's been a real bit of sweat for Hawks fans because, look, it won't be the number one overall pick in the draft, but a 13th, 14th, 15th, 15th pick in the draft is a real asset that will be very helpful for the Hawks moving forward. So, at any rate, the Hawks were rooting for the Kings to win on Wednesday, and they did not. So the Kings lost to the Mavs at home, and the Hawks are still in pretty decent shape for the Kings pick, but there's a lot more uncertainty. I was hoping to be able to do this podcast late night on Wednesday into Thursday, as I am right now, and tell you that, hey, the Kings pick is going to be 95% or better to convey. We're not there yet, though, because of the loss by the Kings today. So as for Friday rooting interest, obviously for the general Hawks fan, winning the game against the Heat on Friday is the biggest thing by far, and I totally get that. This segment right now is only about the Kings pick. Keep that in mind. Only about the Kings pick. There are two rooting interests for the Kings pick on Friday. The Hawks only need one of them to happen. Obviously, they can both happen to be great, But if only one of these has to happen. If they both don't happen, the Hawks are in some trouble for the Kings pick. If at least one of these two things happen, the Hawks will have at least a 94.3% chance to get the Kings pick. So not guaranteed, but a huge, huge, huge chance if one of these things happen. Number one is an easy one. If the Hawks beat the Heat on Friday, that's a double win. Number one, they're in the playoffs. Number two, it helps the Kings pick a lot. If the Hawks lose, the Kings pick still will be in good shape if the Grizzlies beat the Mavs. So I said this a little bit briefly earlier this week. The Hawks do not want the Mavs to make the playoffs for play-in purposes, for Kings purposes, all that stuff. So if Atlanta just wins the game, that'd be easy. Great. Obviously, that wouldn't be easy to win, but if that is a thing that happens, it'd be good for the Hawks. That would push the Kings to be either 13 or 14 in the lottery because the Kings have a better record than Miami and a better record than Chicago. They'd be 12 and 13. So the Hawks would be that'd be good shape. If the Hawks lose, obviously not great for anybody, Sacramento would still be at least 13th in the draft lottery, coming into the lottery again, pre-lottery, if the Grizzlies beat the Mavs, because Sacramento has a better record than Dallas and a better record than Chicago. So all that said, the disaster-ish potential scenario for the Kings pick is a Hawks loss and a Mavs win. Even then, the Hawks still are not dead at all for the pick. But because of what happened in game 82 and why I talked about that day, just 4 days ago now, as we record this podcast, I said Sunday it would have been better for the Hawks for draft purposes to lose to the Magic in that meaningless game on Sunday. Because they won it, that gave them one more win, and they're tied with the Kings in the win column. So, all that said, if the Hawks lose and the Mavs win, it will come down, at least heavily come down, to an actual coin flip for draft positioning between the Hawks, hilariously, who don't have their pick, and the Kings. So I'll get into that later on if necessary. Hopefully it won't be necessary. But if the Hawks lost that game, they'd be in better shape right now. Either way, though, if you're looking for draft purposes, people asking this question, it's been complicated the whole time. I get that. You got to be a diehard and a sicko to understand this stuff. I get it. It is complicated, but now it's not as complicated, at least heading into the lottery. What the Hawks want to happen on Friday is a Hawks win, of course. But if they don't win, they could be bailed out a little bit for Kings purposes by a Grizzlies win over the Mavs. All right. More to come on this shortened episode of the podcast, but first, a word from our partners on the podcast. This show is brought to you by SKIMS. When I found out that SKIMS actually makes underwear for men, I was really actually intrigued by that. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family, and I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, it's definitely living up to the hype. Many people in my life have had issues with underwear in the past, fit, comfort, just finding the right stock of what they want, and SKIMS changes all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. For example, they have a stretch 5-inch boxer brief, and they have rave reviews for that item. They're perfect for the active lifestyle. They move with you. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day long, whether you're working out or just chilling, running errands, etc. They're the most comfortable thing and most reliable underwear that you will have available anywhere in your life. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing in any situation across the board. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA, as well as in SKIMS stores. And also, let them know that we sent you to them. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show. And the drop-down menu that follows. One more time, the place to go is skims.com/LockedOnNBA. This show is brought to you by Game Time. There's something like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without any of the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it actually fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals save up to 60%. 60% is a lot of money. I love using Game Time for many different reasons. One is last-minute deals again. Save 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., etc. And with CPUs before you buy, no surprise fees, lowest price possible guarantee. You can book with total and utter confidence with Game Time. And also, the lowest price guarantee means it's never worth having to worry about overpaying for tickets as well. Take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that code is LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and we'll get in a little bit to a mailbag question from Rod in a moment. I want to just give you one set of quick stats that I did not share with you on the show on Tuesday. So again, for the full breakdown of the game against Orlando, that was not so much fun for the Hawks. That podcast is the place to do it. It's episode 1953, dropped Tuesday night. What I didn't mention was actually the Hawks set a bunch of season lows in that game. They actually made their fewest threes of the season with 4. They had the fewest three-point attempts of the season with 21. And they had, I believe it was their third lowest or second lowest effective field goal percentage all year long. So basically, it was their worst perimeter shooting game of the entire year. And some of that, again, was Orlando, as I talked about a lot on that podcast. They're very good defensively. But the Hawks, after watching the game again, even watching more clips today, they just didn't hunt enough shots between, a lot of the supporting guys, et cetera. That will not be, hopefully, as hard for the Hawks against Miami as it was against Orlando. It's not the same level of defensive team. But if you're looking for, to diagnose some stuff from the offense, I think the lack of urgency in that area, be able to create three-point attempts, not playing enough off of that as a part of the weaponry was a big factor. I just want to say that out loud. I know I mentioned a little bit on the podcast, but wanted to add that on. Anyway, that's it for the game. Other than this is going to be a look ahead, but also look behind. The question is from Rod. It came in Tuesday, and it says, with no foul trouble or injuries, how would you assign the front court minutes on Friday? And this is part of actually a long question that I ended up answering some of indirectly on the podcast on Tuesday night. So one more plug for that again. Listen to that. But I will also note this. No one wants to hear this, and I understand that. There's a pretty practical reason why the Hawks have had some trouble with the front court in recent days, and it's because they're quite literally missing 3 of their 4 most prominent players in the front court. I know that's not like a popular opinion to throw out there. It's not an excuse. You're making excuses. No, I'm laying out the reason in a lot of different ways why the Hawks have been in some front court peril at times. It's not an excuse. It's just the practical reality of the situation. Jalen Johnson's not playing. He's their second best player. Also, while Clint Capella and Larry Nance would not have fixed everything against Orlando, I can promise you this, they're both better than Don Barlow. And Don Barlow played 12 minutes in the game on Tuesday, if nothing else. So anyway, I think it's being kind of overlooked in some circles, maybe some of the panic, some of the doom that said is for the – I get it. I expect people to be really upset about a playoff level loss. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be upset at all. I'm not saying that. It was a bad loss, bad performance, all that. But I think it's been lost in the context, some of the nuanced stuff about hey, there might be a reason the Hawks are having some front court issues, and it's because they don't have their guys available to them. Anyway, I'll give this caveat as well before I answer the question in full about the rotation in the front court. Game flow can change. I also don't think that Miami or Chicago even, but especially not Miami, they're actually going to play Miami, will bring kind of the necessity of the size that the Hawks needed against Orlando. Orlando is bigger and more physical than Miami is. That's just the reality of the situation. Miami's more skilled than Orlando. They have better shooters than Orlando, but it's a different matchup. So I think it may be that the Hawks can get away with, if they want to, playing a little bit smaller against Miami at times. I wouldn't say you have to do that or should do that, but that's a little bit of a caveat as to this answer. With that said, I think it's actually interesting to go through this, and I kind of did it as an exercise, and I was like, this is probably a good thing to do on the podcast, so we'll do it. So the question again was how to construct the rotation in a vacuum, and the question was no foul trouble and no injuries. That's actually an important caveat here because foul trouble can change everything. Even if foul trouble is too aggressively curtailed. Anyway, there are 96 minutes available at the 4 and the 5 total. So start there. First, I'll say 38 minutes for Okongwu. That's a rough approximation. He could probably play more than that. He played 40 plus a couple times the last couple of weeks, but I would say plug him in for 38 minutes. He's played 37 or more 4 times recently, but he also has not played that much a lot in his career. So I think 38 is reasonable in an elimination game. If it's 41, I won't be surprised, but 38 is my guess right now. From there, and by the way, that should not be controversial at all. I know there's this whole conversation today that always happens about Okongwu and his height. It's very silly, but one thing that's not up for debate is that he's their best center right now. So he's got to play a lot. That's not controversial, nor should it be groundbreaking. It is what it is. I'll say 30 minutes for Mo Gay. Now, that's a lot for Mo Gay. A lot for Mo Gay. In fact, it'd be the second most he's ever played in an NBA game. It would be 30 minutes. I know what I'm saying. That's a lot of minutes for Mo Gay. I get it. But this is the no foul trouble, no injuries projection that I was asked for. 30 is a round number, but it also is 10 minutes of a Okongwu backup center because the time was at 38. So that's 10 minutes left of backup center, which I think Mo should be doing. Then 20 minutes next to Okongwu. It's rough, 30 minutes. That makes sense in some respects. If you can get to 32 with Mo, go ahead. If he's comfortable with that physically, he's had injury issues, then go ahead and do that if you want to. I'm trying to be reasonable. 30 is a lot, but I'll say 30 for this. And look, Mo Gay is a guy that I like. He isn't some like established star player. He's still flawed on offense. He's pretty bad on offense, honestly. But he can crash the boards. And then defensively, here's what I'll say. There is no one on the Hawks roster after Okongwu and Gay that can even pretend to do what Mo Gay does defensively. They can't even pretend. And if you want to have the best defensive chance that you have, Mo's got to be on the floor a lot. There are two guys who I would describe as even average defensive players at the 4 and the 5 for the Hawks. And they are Okongwu and Gay. That's it. Niang, not average. Don Barlow, not average. Anybody else at the 4 is going to be small, which means probably trending to below average. Even Ricochet, who is, I think, a reasonable power forward option, as a 20-year-old skinny rookie, he's not a plus defender at the 4. He's just not. So, like, that'd be what I would do next. But they don't have a lot of defensive options. That's why I'm leaning into Mo Gay. So that leaves 28 minutes to fill at the power forward spot. That's 38 at center for Okongwu, 10 at center for Gay. That's all 48 minutes. That's 20 more for Mo at 4. 28 left. I think kind of assign somewhere between like 12 and 20 to Niang, depending on how he's playing in that game. If he's making shots, it'll probably be 20, maybe more than 20. If he's not making shots and he's struggling defensively, it probably will be 12, maybe 14. They're not going to not play Niang, I don't think, for a whole game, but I think you can kind of gauge that up and down, I would say. And then ideally, again, for me, the rest of it would be Ricochet at the 4. So whatever Niang does not fill will be Ricochet for me. I would not play anybody else in the front court with no foul trouble, whatever. I wouldn't play Barlow. I wouldn't go super small at any point. As small as I would get would be Ricochet at the 4. That's it. I'd rather lean more on LeVert than Mann and Krejci, personally, and also on Ricochet, who I thought could have played more against Orlando. I wouldn't play Barlow unless there's like actual foul trouble. And by the way, when I say foul trouble, I mean more aggressive foul trouble than Quinn would probably say. Like if Okongwu has 4 fouls in the first half, okay, that's foul trouble enough to at least maybe try it if you have to. If Gay has 5 fouls in 15 minutes, I get it. But if it's just 2 fouls in the first quarter for Mo or for Okongwu, that's not enough to play Don Barlow. You need to have like a borderline emergency in this game for me to go deeper into the bench than that. I like Dom as a prospect. I like Dom as a player, like all that stuff. He's not up for this right now. I don't think he's ready for this. He's 21 years old. Like, it's not there. So that's just what it is. So there you go. The answer is 38-ish for Okongwu, 30-ish for Gay, 15, 20, something like that for Niang, and the rest of that to Ricochet at the 4 and the 5. If that makes sense, hopefully it does. If not, it is what it is. And there was a lot of reaction to what I said on the show on Tuesday. I went, let's just say, more nuts than I almost ever do about the fourth quarter lineup of Barlow and Niang together. I stand by what I said. I mean, I think that was indefensibly bad. It was 2 minutes, but it also was -6 in 2 minutes in a game that they were competitive in. That's not why they lost the game, but man, I stand by my reaction to that, is what I would say. People were asking me, like, if I was wrong. Yeah, I was wrong up. I think it's more because I don't like stuff that's indefensible. I don't get emotional about things like this, but it was like I couldn't fit. When I can't think of a reason why something happened, that's when I start to get my brain broken, and that's what happened in that spot, which maybe is why I answered this question as well now. So it's not personal on Dom. I think probably Niang is better than people realize that he is in some respects. He gets picked on a lot by Hawks fans. I get why. He's slow defensively. I understand it. All that said, that's my projection for now. No foul trouble, and we'll see if that's any closer to what the Hawks do. If I had to guess, Gay will play less than I want him to play, especially in this matchup. But we will see in about 2 days as I'm recording this podcast right now. All right, more to come. A brief preview of Hawks Heat in advance of the podcast that I'm probably going to be doing on Thursday on that same topic with the guys from Locked On Heat. First, though, from our partners on the show. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, Call of Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Fire TV, gaming is affordable and portable. You can play your high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. If you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. Also, there's endless entertainment options with Fire TV as well. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, we'll dive in now a little bit to the game on Friday. Not a full-fledged preview because I'll be doing more of that on Thursday, but a little bit of a table setter in some respects. It's the second time the Hawks have been played the Heat in a play-in setting. The first time was actually 2 years ago, 2023, in a game the Hawks actually won on the road in upset fashion in the 7-8 game. The Hawks were the 8 seed that year, and the Hawks had a 39% offensive rebound rate in that game. It was the Collins and Capella show in that one. They bludgeoned the Heat up front on the way to a pretty fun win, actually. They got the Hawks into the playoffs after they had lost to the Heat in a previous playoff series. That was kind of a fun redemption story. Obviously not relevant to this year because a lot's changed on both sides, but that's the last time they played in the play-in, and the only time they played in the play-in. This year they are 2-2 in 4 meetings, and the home team won all 4. Now, that's not out of the ordinary. This game's in Atlanta. That's not a bad thing, of course. But doesn't guarantee anything, just more of an advantage that you would like to have. Of course, you'd rather have the game at home than not be at home, but nothing is assured by any stretch of the imagination, but we'll see. Also, at this very moment, on Wednesday evening, I guess it's now Thursday morning, as I'm recording this podcast, our friends at FanDuel make the Hawks a 1.5-point favorite. So basically a coin flip-ish game, a slight advantage for the Hawks at FanDuel. There you go. It's been a pretty different roster for the Hawks now than in most of the games against Miami this year. There are only 2 players on the roster who played in all 4 games against Miami. It's Trae Young and Zachary Shea. That's it. Even guys who have been here all year long didn't play in all 4. Dyson Daniels only played in 3, for example. He's the most prominent of the guys. Okongwu played in only 3 games. Miami's much more similar overall, actually, which you wouldn't guess because they actually traded Jimmy Butler at the deadline. But Jimmy's played in none of the games against the Hawks. 0. Even when he was on the team, he wasn't playing against the Hawks. So, Bam and Hero, their 2 best players, played in all 4 games against the Hawks. And all of the rotation guys, all of them, played at least 3 games against Atlanta this year. So, it's a pretty similar-ish Miami team, though they changed a lot in February. Offensively, this is very brief. In the 4 games, the Hawks shot it well, but turned the ball over too much. And then defensively, the Heat also shot it well, but Hawks were pretty good everywhere else other than shooting. So it's actually a lot of good shot making, but not a lot of great defensive stuff on either side overall. And that kind of a similar profile on both sides, and which kind of led to, again, 2-2 in the 4 games. So what are the Heat? Obviously, they're well coached. Is a Hall of Fame level guy, title winner, all those things. Since the Jimmy trade, and obviously if you didn't know this, they traded Jimmy Butler about 2 months ago, 10 weeks ago to Golden State. Since then, they are 20th in offense and 12th in defense, according to Cleaning the Glass. So roughly league average overall, a little bit worse on offense than defense. There you go. On offense, they have been solid in shooting and turnover avoidance, but they've been bottom 5 in that span, offensive rebounding and free throw creation. It's not surprising. Jimmy Butler is a free throw creator. He's not there anymore, so they don't get to the line a lot recently. Worth noting, it's only 1 game. They got to the line 22 times against Chicago. Chicago's defense is terrible in this one spot, but anyway, that's what the profile is for the last 10 weeks or so. Defensively, it's the inverse. Miami is actually top 5 in the league in the last 2 months in defensive rebounding and free throw prevention. So 2 potential areas of battleground. Who wins the glass and who wins the free throw battle? Not a huge surprise, but there you go. And I would also add, can the Hawks protect the basketball? Because in the meeting so far this year, turnovers were not a friendly area for Atlanta. Defensively, I think you obviously are going to see Dyson Daniels on Tyler Hero. That's not going to be any surprise. The Heat have been playing two bigs. Some they do. They have been starting Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo together a lot, but Ware plays like 20 minutes a game, whereas Bam plays mid-30s, and they go back to a relatively normal look beyond the starting lineup. So similar to the Hawks in some respects with Mo and Okongwu, very similar size on both sides there. But the guy to keep an eye on, of course, is Hero. Bam's had a pretty rough season by Bam's standards. He's still a great player, but not quite the same player that he's been in the previous years. But Duncan Robinson's beaten the Hawks at times. They've lost him at times off the bench. Like, there are X factors up and down the roster, but obviously, can you slow Hero down? Important. It's good to have Dyson to do that, but that's not a guarantee. And then who makes shots? Obviously. I mean, the Hawks didn't make – I led with that for a reason earlier. The Hawks had pretty much their worst shooting night of the season, or at least one of their worst 3 shooting nights of the season in their biggest game of the season. Will that happen again? If it does, they're in trouble. If it evens out a little bit, they'll be in better shape. So that's the short preview. The Hawks are a small favorite at home. That makes sense. And I wanted to just get this out there, extra podcast for Thursday morning, and then I'll have at least a show by Friday. Between now and Friday's tip-off, I'll have another podcast in this feed. The plan is, again, for crossover. If that breaks down for some reason, I'll have another show in some other fashion, but I'll have a podcast for you between now and the game on Friday. But again, Friday night, 7 o'clock, Hawks Heat for the 8 seed and a trip to Cleveland on Sunday. All right, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this little quick fill-in podcast in the middle of the week. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Follow us on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland, and also on Patreon at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I appreciate everybody for listening to the podcast as always, and we'll see you later on this week.